The Cincinnati Bengals continue to trend in the same direction. The offense, arrow pointing up. The defense, still searching for answers. Let's talk about what the film showed us about Sunday's victory.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow, along with your host, James Rapien, joined today by Mike Santagata. We're going to get into the film takeaways from the Bengals' home road victory against the Carolina Panthers, their first victory of the season. And it continues to point to the offense looking like the unit we thought it would be, and the defense, well, having issues. We'll get to those issues at the end of the show. We're going to start with some of the positives on the offensive side of the ball. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On Bengals, covering your team every day on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Shout out to the everydayers. Welcome back. And thank you for making Locked On Bengals your first listen. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime, where you can save $20 on your first purchase of tickets in the Gametime app when you create an account and use code Locked On NFL. You can find Mike's work on BengalsTalk.com, at Bengals_Sands on Twitter, and on the Always Game Day in Cincinnati podcast. And Mike, we're going to start today with Joe Burrow, who to me looks like he is now in midseason form. The pocket movement is there. Good decision-making for the most part in this game. Even the one questionable decision he made worked out for a touchdown going in to halftime. Really in a high degree of control at the line of scrimmage, I thought. What were your takeaways when you watched Joe Burrow in this game?
Yeah, the high degree of control, the operator at the line of scrimmage before the ball is ever snapped is what really stands out to me. When you're on the road, it becomes even more difficult to do that because you can't use your cadence as much, where you think of like hard counts and getting defenses to show their hand as well. So he's using shifts and motions a little bit more to try to see what the defense is up to before. He seems like he's in complete control at the line when it comes to setting the protections, getting himself into a position to throw the ball down the field and not have any free runners. Credit to the offensive line, credit to Zach Moss and the tight ends for picking everything up, because I think they did an incredible job of that on Sunday. But I think the first thing that stood out to me was just he is in complete control, changing plays, getting into good looks versus everything. And then it does seem like he's in midseason form in terms of he's looking pretty good in the pocket. He's moving around. He's looking mobile. He's keeping his eyes downfield, looking to throw the ball. It doesn't seem like he's too run happy. It doesn't seem like he's, quick trigger or anything. Maybe once in a while you get to the point where it's like, did he need to check that down already? Or could he have hung in there and stayed on that read just a beat longer? But those type of things are nitpicking to me. I think he looked really good on Sunday, and it was probably the biggest reason that this offense was pretty awesome.
Would you call him, quote, sneaky athletic?
Well, I've been watching him so much that I don't think I call him that. But yeah, I think for some people it is sneaky when he's running around back there, because I do see the thing about like pocket passer doesn't move around that much. Like, well, he can, even if he's not doing it every game.
For sure he can. And I'm glad you brought up the pocket presence part, because that certainly stands out. Obviously, you've seen him. You've watched every snap of his career, I believe, certainly multiple times when it comes to this game in this season. How comfortable do you think he is with this evolution? Because I think we're going to talk a lot about how the offense has looked and the things that are changing. You mentioned the Zach Moss, the tight ends and pass protection. How comfortable has he looked, and not just on Sunday, but in general, with this evolution with the Bengals offense?
I feel like he's looked pretty comfortable. I mean, this looks the most comfortable he's been in something other than when he, goes gun empty, spread type of stuff. That feels like where he's at home to me. But this, out of all the times they've tried to have some other part of this offense, think of the siloed under center wide zone stuff combined with what they were trying to do, this feels the most normal for him. And maybe it's because with the 12 personnel shift, they're doing some of the spread stuff, but they're also keeping it in shotgun, sometimes go to pistol. It just seems so, variable and multiple in how they can use the 12 personnel sets, that I don't think it ends up creating a siloed effect, of an effect where it looks like Joe Burrow doesn't like what he's doing, but he has to do it. It seems like they finally found the marriage of getting Joe Burrow comfortable along with having a really effective run game.
And I think that one of the more impressive things to me about the direction they're going is they have all these different tools in the toolkit at this point, and they are calling on those tools differently from a week to week basis. They're a game plan specific offense now where they can bring a different approach to different games. We've seen this from them in the past, but it didn't look quite as diverse then as it does now. By the way, according to Andrew Russell, shout out for this stat, the Bengals are using 12 personnel and 36.4% of their offensive snaps, which is the highest rate in the NFL. And if I would have told you coming into this season that the Bengals were going to lead the league in 12 personnel usage, I don't think I would have believed myself, because they've been one of the perennial leaders in 11 personnel usage. The one thing we didn't see from them a ton on Sunday was a bunch of play action. They did use some more of the pistol. They were under center a little bit in that game, but they only had 6 play action dropbacks charted according to Pro Football Focus. But what did you see from them schematically in terms of the way they were using their personnel differently, the way they were using their run game differently, and what signs of evolution did we see this week? Because it seems like there's something new every week.
The biggest evolution for me watching was that Chase Brown's getting all the runs now. I've come on here for the past, I don't know, year and said like, yeah, Chase Brown gets the designer runs. He gets the stuff where the tight end leads him, he follows, and he goes and makes a big play. Both of his touchdowns, those are running back runs. They ran split inside zone with 5 offensive linemen and a tight end coming across, and they ran duo with Chase motioned in. I think it was 12 personnel for the other touchdown. It was
actually 11. They had wide receivers attached to both ends of the line of scrimmage on that play.
All right. Well, I thought Chase made a good block on that, although I don't know if I want him putting his body on the line at the goal line all that much. I think that's what stood out to me, though, was Chase Brown is no longer like, no, he's, the change of pace, explosive, get a carry here or there where it's designed, you're going to this hole, you're going to follow this guy, he'll lead you where to go. He's now making the reads, which he did this in college, so it shouldn't be that surprising. But he's making the reads. He's doing the stuff that's difficult for running backs at times, short yardage. He's, finding those hidden yards as well in those situations and being able to push forward and come away with extra yardage. He ran for over 5 yards a carry, and there was probably one explosive run in there, and the rest of it was just good, efficient running, making the right read and hitting the right hole.
Yeah, I think that the way that they're using these running backs, it seems almost perfectly balanced. And snap count wise, it was much closer, more 60-40. Obviously, they trust Zach Moss in the protections, like you mentioned, Sands. But ideally, is this the way you see it moving forward? Because I think there are a lot of people that see Chase and they're like, all right, Chase Brown needs more carries, more touches. You look up, he had 17 touches on Sunday. Is that ideal? Not that they're going to run for $131 every week, because they're not, but just in general, from a percentage standpoint, you think that split makes more sense?
I think in any game that's close or they're leading, yes. I think when they get behind is when you'll probably see the most Zach Moss, just because he is really good in pass protection. He's been beyond what he's advertised, I think, in pass protection.
Picked up a defensive tackle coming around, like coming from outside of Alex Kappa all the way across a couple of offensive linemen, gets him and then leaks out to pick up a first down. That was an awesome play for Zach Moss in this game. There are a few other newcomers like Chase Brown, like Zach Moss. Amarius Mims made his first NFL start on Sunday. Eric All was tight end 1 by snap count for the first time in his young career, and his role continues to look like it is growing in this offense. We'll talk about some of these newcomers and their impact on this Bengals offense and touch on the offensive line that has been playing well early this season coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The Bengals, they might have won, but they are not favored this week, even though they're at home against the Baltimore Ravens. And we'll spend a ton of time on it, but you look at the quick FanDuel odds, the Bengals 2.5-point home underdogs, and you can get in on the action right now and start the season big with America's #1 sports book. So right now, the way it works is you go to FanDuel.com, you sign up. When you place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. It is that simple. So maybe you think the Bengals are going to handle business this week. Maybe you're looking ahead to their Sunday night matchup in New York in week 6. Regardless, FanDuel is the place to go. And right now, the Bengals underdogs in week 5. So go there now at FanDuel.com and get $200 in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com.
Let's talk about Amarius Mims' first start. We'll talk about the offensive line on the whole, but those that look at PFF grades, which are not an insignificant number of Bengals fans, at least in my social media sphere and those that I see. I don't get to interact with them in person because I don't live there, unfortunately. But Amarius Mims comes in at a 54, the lowest graded offensive lineman, with a 53 pass blocking grade, a 53 run blocking grade. I didn't come away with that impression when I watched the game live. I know he got beat cleanly at least once, maybe twice. I think both of those on inside moves. But I thought he held up, for the most part, pretty well. I haven't had a chance to rewatch every snap, though, like you have, Mike. What were your big takeaways when you watched Amarius Mims on film?
Yeah, the disconnect for me is 53-53 pass and run. He gave up, 2 clean inside wins to Clowney. He's also spent the entire game facing their only really NFL level pass rusher in Clowney. I think the other guys are, work in progress. I mean, the Panthers are rebuilding. They're not trying to contend with this defensive line. It's kind of like the Bengals defensive tackles, but there's injuries there at least. So I thought that was a good game in pass protection. In terms of like the run blocking, that's still just a work in progress to me. Where if he came out at 55 like that in PFF and you told me 65, 70 pass blocking and like a 40 run block, I would have been like, okay, yeah, I could see that, because he just doesn't seem comfortable run blocking yet, and he didn't seem that way in Georgia either. So when the game's a little fast for you in college still when it comes to run blocking, getting the NFL and the game just moves faster, it's tough. You can still see why he can become a really good run blocker. You see some movement, you see some movement ability from him and movement generated from him in terms of power and athleticism, but it just feels like when something doesn't get lined up the way he needs it to, he's not really making a good block in the run game. Pass protection, I thought he was good. Like, I maybe have to watch it a third time, but when I watched it back over, every rep against Clowney, give up 2 clean wins, and one of those he got to Burrow, and Burrow, that was the interception where he made a miss and made a play. But overall, like when he won against Clowney, it wasn't just because it was quick game. It wasn't because of whatever. I think this might be one of those PFF things where they don't chart, how difficult your assignment is and how difficult your job is when you're the Bengals and it's a lot of straight drop back protection. That's a difficult life to live in pass protection as an offensive tackle. But when he won against Clowney, there were definite wins. Like Clowney wasn't winning that if he got 6 seconds, let alone 3.
And along those lines, was it a situation where he was on an island for much of the game? I saw at least one rep where he had a little bit of chip help, but it didn't look like they were giving him a ton of help either.
No, not a ton of help. Some help. They're not treating him like he's, Joe Thomas over there or Willie Anderson, but he's still getting a little help as a rookie, but it doesn't look like they're babying him as a rookie either. It's not like they gave him a chip on every play or anything like that. Plenty of plays because Burrow likes, and the offense likes to get 5 out in the passing pattern, that he has to be on his own, and sometimes with the slide going away from him, so he's really on his own. And I think that situation is when you can see the inside move, because at least when you get the slide, the guard can give you some presence there. I think that's where he really needs to work, is when the slide's going away from you and everybody's working away from you on a true island. You need to stay inside out, can't overset at all in this situation, because you got to make this the longest path to get to the quarterback, and inside is the quickest path.
Yeah, I think it's pretty significant, just the fact that he made it through the game and got all those valuable snaps. And I don't even mean health-wise. I just think that the fact that he was able to do that and play pretty darn well. I mean, he's getting a game ball. I don't know if people realize that. We didn't talk about the game balls in our post-game show. The entire offensive line, Frank Pollock as well, getting a game ball. So let's discuss the rest of the line. How do you think they did? How do you think they performed overall when you watch the film, Sans?
Yeah, really good games from everybody, I thought. And I would agree that Mims was probably the worst of the unit, but the worst of the unit to me was like a good pass protector and not a great run blocker in that game. look, that if you're good in one element, I mean, that seems like something the Bengals haven't had as their worst player on the offensive line in a game in a while. I thought that Karras, he had that one slip, and that's also part of the reason I think Zach Moss had to pick up that defensive tackle, because he kind of got stepped on and tripped. But him and Kappa, I thought were solid in pass protection. I thought they provided solid level play. Volson, there were some big wins, obviously the hold, but I thought he might have just, without that hold, he could have been the best player in that game for them, which that's a big improvement for what he's been in the past. I think that's showing some growth. Not the most difficult opponent again. So it's going to be a big test this week when they have to play against Matabike and those guys, Travis Jones. And Orlando Brown's been good the whole year. He, again, played really well. I think the stance change is one thing, but it also seems like last year he probably was really affected by that injury, because you started thinking like, is this the guy you're getting? And instead now it looks more like Chief Super Bowl Orlando Brown, and not return on investment that's something that's more than you paid for.
Yeah, the groin injury for sure bothered him. Like, factual. I know people hear that and think it's an excuse, but I'm glad you see it on film and you can see the difference.
Yeah.
The other noteworthy performance on the offensive line, according to PFF grading, was Alex Kappa. He was actually, I believe, the highest graded player on offense, period, for the Bengals in this game, with an 86.2, leading Joe Burrow there. So any thoughts on Kappa, just to round out some offensive line thoughts?
Hopefully I didn't miss this too much. I thought he played solid, but that's a really good grade. So I might have to go watch his snaps again for a third time or something, just to make sure. Maybe there were some plays I missed that were big time in the run game or something. Yeah. Maybe my eyes were distracted by Mims or Chase Brown, something exciting like that.
It's a classic case of the run game in PFF grading getting a lot of weight for offensive linemen, which as Bengals fans is not something that we're used to valuing at a really high level, but they did have 30 running plays to 37 passing plays in this game, according to PFF charting. And so perhaps this week, the run game a little bit more important. The one play that stands out to me for really the entire offensive line was Chase Brown's first touchdown run, the interior, every single guy won. It was Cordell Volson sealing off the backside, Eric All coming across and getting the backside end, and Alex Kappa torquing the front side defensive tackle out of the play, Ted Karras getting to the second level, and Chase Brown doing a good job of hitting that hole fast, getting skinny. And Nick Scott late to react. Nick Scott culpable for at least two, or at least three, I think, of the Bengals touchdowns. 2 or 3 of the Bengals touchdowns. Not a good game for former Bengal Nick Scott for the Carolina Panthers, but a good play from the interior offensive line that really showcased their upside. And I guess the note there is, we'll see how it is this week. You got 2 straight weeks of some pretty bad defensive lines, like some of the worst defensive lines you're going to see.
John Allen and Daron Payne for Washington, at least. So
at least there's some guys there that have been good, but they haven't been as threatening as they have been in the past. The last time the Bengals saw those guys 4 years ago, I was much more worried about them than I was this year, for example. I still think that this week against Baltimore, that competition level ratchets way up, both interior and at the ends. And so that'll be a good challenge for this offensive line that we're feeling very positive about early this season, to show that they can do it against quality competition too, because they struggle with Chris Jones. I think everyone's going to struggle with Chris Jones and the Chiefs. That was in week 2. But outside of that, they've really handled business, I think, pretty well. Also handling his business and earning a bigger opportunity is Eric All, who leads the Bengals in tight end snaps this week. We will finish our discussion on the offense with some notes on Eric All coming up next, and then get to what's going on with this defense, why those struggles are continuing, and the sad story that we keep telling on that side of the ball. We'll finish the show with those 2 topics coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the app you need right now. Literally, right now. Go to the App Store, go and download Gametime. Why? Because if you're planning on going to a Bengals game this year and you don't have tickets, or maybe you want to watch them beat the Ravens on Sunday. Oh man, Jake is going to be so bothered that I said that. Well, if you want to watch the Bengals beat the Ravens on Sunday, you got to get to Gametime, because Gametime makes it so easy to get to your favorite live events. And it's not just NFL. Of course, it's NFL season, but NBA right around the corner. Maybe you're in one of these playoff baseball cities and you want to go watch postseason baseball. I don't know that feeling. I live in Cincinnati. Well, you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NFL, Locked On NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, Sands, let's dive into Eric All, tight end 1. The guy that goes from 4th rounder and everyone wondering about his health to getting cleared to now. I think everyone has mentioned Eric All that has followed this team in one way or another because of the impact he's making. Had another 4 catches. Obviously, they use him as a blocker a ton. What has he brought, the new number 83, Eric All, what has he brought to this offense?
He's the only tight end that isn't specialized in his role. He can do everything. He can do it all. So
pun intended, baby. Let's go.
But Drew Sample, he's a great blocker, but we know he's not the most athletic guy to get out there and catch the ball. And then Mike Gesicki, pretty good receiver. We saw that week 2. Not the guy you really want in line, and they actually did test that against Washington. It didn't work. So why not just have a guy that doesn't tip off what you could be doing and that can do everything? He can line up in the formation, in the backfield. He's actually, when they get a 12 personnel, they want a 21 personnel type look with a fullback. He's the fullback, even though there was that offseason discussion, Drew Sample's playing fullback. No, it's Eric All's playing fullback. He's the one leading through the hole. Sample's trying to be an extra offensive lineman. And it just feels like when your role isn't so specialized to, yeah, he catches well, but we need to hide him here. Or he blocks well, but we can't really put him out on the passing pattern. You want to have 5 guys out there. Even if it's a chip then release type of situation, Eric All can do that. He can block well, and it's not to the level of Drew Sample. He can catch well. Right now, I don't think it's up to the level of Mike Gesicki, but being the second best at both of that gives you a guy that you probably don't want to take off the field. And he's gotten better every week, and he's a young guy, so getting him snaps makes him get better. It's kind of, a nice evolution there where not only is the offense evolving, but he's probably evolving as a player with the more snaps, the experience, getting better. And it just makes sense that if he's going to keep playing well as a rookie, that you just keep putting him out there because he's giving you good level blocking and good level receiving. And I'm not sure anybody else would be able to do that. I don't even know the last Bengals tight end that was able to do that.
I think getting that from him early in his career has been something that has really impressed his coaching staff in terms of his ability to take in information and understand what his role is on a variety of plays. The snap split is still pretty interesting for the tight ends. While Eric Hall led the Bengals in snaps, he was out there for 29 of his 40 snaps to block in some capacity, ran routes on 11 of his snaps. So when you look at his production, 4 catches for 29 yards or whatever it was, I think that's what it was, on 11 snaps, that's a pretty efficient rate of production for a limited number of routes he ran. Meanwhile, Mike Gesicki, by contrast, is out there to run block on 2 of his 22 snaps and ran a passing pattern, ran a route on 20 of his 22 snaps. So the splits between their tight ends becoming, I think, a little bit more stark as the season goes on, but they clearly feel like Drew Sample, along with Eric Hall, and we're highlighting Eric Hall here, are both their more versatile tight ends. With Drew Sample, 9 of his 38 snaps in routes and 29 of his 38 snaps, like Eric Hall, in there as a blocker. But I really like the 2 tight end stuff with Drew Sample and Eric Hall. Just the ability to get those guys out there that gives you play action versatility, running game versatility, the ability to give you something in the passing game with Eric Hall and Drew Sample's pass blocking prowess, where they can line him up in a number of places and are still using him some as a third down back in shotgun. I think those are some nice pieces that they have to work with on offense. Unfortunately, on defense, I don't have as many nice pieces to highlight here. I think Dax Hill is the best cover corner on the team right now, and that is something that we're saying after a couple of weeks. DJ Turner perhaps earning a bigger role with his large snap count this week, 52 snaps for him. But a lot of the same concerns. And when we talk about why this defense is struggling, we're still talking about their inability to get pressure and the interior defensive line just not being good enough. What were your takeaways when you watched this defense about what looked like it is a trend at this point on that side of the ball for the Bengals?
We'll start front to back because that's what I care about the most. But the defensive tackle room, yes, it's not the best, but I also just don't understand the usage because Chris Jenkins didn't get in there until the goal line stand. And he's probably your best run defender. Now, could be he's not, conditioned up, or they don't think he can take the full allotment of snaps. But when they went out there, they were running a 4-3 type of base the last week and a half. It seemed like halfway through the Chiefs game, they kind of went, oh, yeah, our defensive tackles, we can't do this to them. We can't put 3 of them out there. We got to get into having Keem Davis-Gaither come on the field. Well, they didn't do that this week. They went back to that 3-4-5-2 odd front base, and it started with Tufele, Guy, and Carter, and it didn't really work. I mean, once in a while, guys held up, but it's about consistency. And none of those guys, well, Guy's consistent, I think, but the other two, not consistent. So when they hold up, it feels like the shoe's going to drop on the next play where something bad's going to happen with them. Guy is giving you like solid, fine, okay level defensive tackle. Like he's the replacement level that people talk about with like value above a replacement player. Guy would be the guy that is a replacement level guy. And he's the second best defensive tackle, I think, right now. So that's not ideal, but they're also putting too many of them out there. I didn't really understand that going to that base again, if Jenkins isn't a part of it, especially. Hide the defensive tackles a little bit, try to maybe just have an extra linebacker instead of an extra defensive tackle, and your linebackers are a strength and your defensive tackles might be the weakest part of this unit. Pass rushing, it felt like anytime they didn't send an extra guy, they didn't get any pressure unless Hendrickson did something. So that's how it's always been. Osai got some. I think he was better this week than last week for sure. I think Osai was worth mentioning there, but it comes in terms of the interior, nothing. And Sam Hubbard, maybe a stunt here and there, but it's kind of who he's been. Better run defending this week even. I think he was a good run defender this week, but the pass rushing is just nothing really there. So they need some type of spark in this front to be able to become a good defense, but I don't see how. And they tried to send some blitzes, and some of them worked. They finally did that. It's called rain in the Belichick world pressure, where they put everybody on the line. It's a zero pressure, but whichever linebacker the center slides to drops out. And that's when Jermaine Pratt got the knockdown. And we've seen Wilson get a couple of picks on that play. So it's kind of cool to see him get back to that. But they need to keep finding ways to get pressure that don't involve sending their 4, because sending their 4 isn't doing it.
Yeah, as far as the defensive front, I liked how many times you said Guy. Hopefully he's not just a guy moving forward. We'll see health-wise with these guys who can suit up and who can't. Hopefully they get some reinforcements this week. I want to ask you about Geno Stone, and I'm sure Jake has more on the trenches, and we can go back there. Did you see these bad angles and the issues that we've seen from him on tape in Baltimore? Because I'm pretty surprised. Like Von Bell, like, all right, he missed a tackle. Dax Hill missing tackles, fine. He is their top cover corner, though. Like, not shocked about DJ Turner. The two shocking things are Cam Taylor-Britt, to me, just getting beat badly a lot, and then Geno Stone just not working. Like, whatever it is, it just doesn't feel like it's working at the level that it should.
Yeah, I think once in a while you'd see a bad angle, or you'd see a play where his limited athleticism showed up in Baltimore. And I don't know if it was just the pieces around him that were making, a rising tide lifts all ships. Maybe they just made him look a little better when you're playing next to Kyle Hamilton and guys that are working like a hive mind on defense, rather than guys that are trying to do a little too much sometimes for their role. But I didn't see this as an issue that cropped up as often as it has in Cincinnati, where he's taking angles that just he doesn't have the athleticism to get there. And even if he did, it's not a good angle. The last line of defense, you have to be able to take a good pursuit angle on a guy. I mean, that's, again, it feels like we talked about this last week, where he should know. I mean, you go over your angles and making tackles every week in high school and college, the NFL, and he's been in the NFL a while. So I feel like he should know what angles he needs to take, what angles to get there, but it just doesn't seem like that's clicked. He wasn't a great tackler in Baltimore. I think that I'm not surprised by, but yeah, I think at least when he missed tackles in Baltimore, it felt like he got there and held up the running back, where right now it feels like when he's missing his angles, missing his tackles, he's not even a roadblock for that running back. He's just running right by him.
Yeah, and that's obviously an issue when Von Bell's limited athleticism is showing up in certain ways. The tackle he missed in that game, there is a problem in the secondary at this point. The communication that they talked about all offseason doesn't seem to be at the level that you would hope it would be to make up for the athletic deficiencies that they've got at safety. And then Cam Taylor-Britt laying an egg with probably his worst NFL game. I mean, to the point where he got benched and Zach Taylor didn't go so far as to call it that. Didn't say that he was hurt after the game when he was asked about it, though, either. But you would hope that there's a reason for that kind of performance. Missing jams, losing the release throughout the game, getting grabby in the route that leads to erasing a pick, or maybe it creates the opportunity for him to get that pick in the first place. And DJ Turner, like I said, playing 52 snaps to Cam Taylor-Britt's 36, and it wasn't all in Cam Taylor-Britt's spot because DJ Turner's playing a little bit all over the place. But just to finish our thoughts here in the secondary, to stay at the back end of the defense, because I don't think there are major concerns about the linebackers at this point. What do you see as a path forward that gives them a chance in the secondary?
I mean, Cam Taylor-Britt has to play better. I think that's really about it. I mean, you expect this guy to, I think most people were expecting to be the best corner on the team this year. And he played like that in weeks 1 and week 2, and then week 3 and week 4, he's been a liability, especially week 4. If this isn't the worst game of his career, I mean, that's awful because it could have been worse. Andy Dalton missed a couple of throws that could have really put a exclamation point on his day. And also wasn't on the field every snap either to lose more. It felt like on that play that he grabbed, it's like praying. He just has an arm out there for what? I mean, maybe I just don't know the corner technique that 15 yards down the field, you're actually supposed to just put an arm out and pray that he runs into it or something. But I haven't seen a lot of guys do that. So that wasn't ideal. And it just felt like, he got beat at the release point a lot by Deontay Johnson. I think what's most concerning for me was he was getting beat at the break point by Xavier Legette. And when your calling card is being a big physical corner, I don't think you get to complain about the receiver being physical back to you, because like if DJ Turner was the guy that got pushed off and like Xavier Legette caught it, I just think, Turner needs to go hit the weight room. Well, Cam Taylor-Britt doesn't. So you got to be stronger than that. I mean, he held up against DK Metcalf doing the same thing. The style makes a fight, and Deontay Johnson's style just destroyed Cam Taylor-Britt in this game. But even the style that he matched up with didn't work out for him in this game. So I think it'll be better. I don't know how it could get worse, but it needs to get better and fast.
It's a good point because the Panthers have a lot of big receivers in general. And you would think, all right, well, if you're bringing DJ Turner in for Cam, it's to match up with Deontay more than it's to match up with Xavier Legette. But they put DJ on Legette plenty. It's not like they weren't okay with that matchup. And so, it's interesting. All right. So the defense has obviously struggled a ton. What can be fixed ahead of a huge matchup against the Ravens? What's a realistic expectation outside of health, which we can't control and we have no idea about today, but from a film standpoint, scheme standpoint, physical standpoint, what can happen?
They show up like they did against the Chiefs. I feel like it's the only game they showed up to tackle. That is just, They missed a bunch of tackles again this week, and that's frustrating when you've seen them make tackles before. So I don't know what's going on there, but they have to be able to make tackles to stop, limit those gains. Derrick Henry we know this, when Derrick Henry gets a full head of steam, nearly impossible to take down. If you can get to him and gang tackle him around the line of scrimmage or just beyond it before he gets going, it's not as difficult to bring him down. But everybody needs to be physical and on the same page for that. I think, guys have to play better. I think you got to get to that even front 4-3 base when the Ravens go 12, 13, 21. I mean, I think the only reason Ravens might not lead the league in 12 personnel is because they bring in Ricard and play a lot of 20 type of stuff. So I think you're going to see a lot of base. I mean, if you were attacking this Bengals defense, I think you would want them to try to put an extra defensive tackle on the field rather than Mike Hilton. So they're going to try to put him in base. They're going to try to run the ball, and you got to be able to stop that. So how do you stop that? It's tough. I mean, without health, I think you play Jenkins more first. And I think Lawrence Guy is an okay run stopper. Get that 4-3 base and get some movement, get some athleticism, get some better players on the field. I think that will matter. I think you're going to have to blitz them where if you couldn't pressure Jaden Daniels and he went 21 of 23, I mean, Lamar is at least as good, if not probably better as a passer right now in their careers. I don't think that's a hot take to say Lamar, 2-time MVP, is a good passer. So if you're not going to get pressure on him, that's going to be tough because he's going to do the exact same thing where it's not going to look good. And that comes not just in the run game, but even if they are able to stop the run, they have to be able to get pressure, manage pressure somehow, whether that's trying to get into, I think 2021 when they just zeroed the heck out of him, something. They have to probably bring extra pieces to get pressure on him and just have a plan for if he scrambles. But I don't think they can try to cage him in and just trust that the collapsing pocket is what's going to stop Lamar Jackson, because I don't see that working for them.
There is no collapsing pocket. We have not seen that in the last couple of weeks from this team. And we'll see. Perhaps they get BJ Hill back this week. Perhaps they get Miles Murphy back this week. And perhaps those pieces can offer them some improved depth on the defensive line. But we will get those answers throughout the week. We will have those updates for you here on Locked On Bengals as we begin to look forward to this big Week 5 AFC North first game of the year against the Baltimore Ravens. Until then, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Bengals. Thanks to Mike for joining us. You can find him again at Bengals_Sands on Twitter, where you will find links to all of his stuff. Always game day in Cincinnati Bengals talk, writing as well. And that's it. That wraps up our film episode. Until next time, thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.